Welcome to the Seed Lever interview series, where we uncover some of the people and the ideas behind the world's fastest growing companies. Today, we're speaking with Bryn Tardent-Powell, who's a marketing manager at Tanda, Australia's #1 platform for attendance, rostering, labour insights, and workforce success. Bryn's been in a growth marketing role at Tanda for the past year or so, which is famously bootstrapped and has over 150 employees throughout the world. Bryn, thanks for jumping on with me today.
No worries. Yeah, thanks for the invite. Really keen.
No worries. You've been on my list. You've been on my list for a long time. I wanted to speak to you. You've got a lot of good stuff. I've got a lot of good spicy insights I'm trying to get to. But maybe where you could just start me off. I mean, I was looking through your LinkedIn, just prepping for this, and I saw you used to work in sort of IT projects. I mean, how did you end up kind of in sales and growth and marketing?
Yeah, that was it's a bit of a topsy-turvy journey. Not everything's as closely related as I might have liked them to be, but I sort of started out in IT when I was about 14 and 9 months, which is like the legal minimum working age here in Australia. And I started at a local record store called Rocking Horse Records, which is very dear to me. I love that place. But I was just really interested in computers and things like that, sort of out of high school into university. Really keen to sort of work in music, but I also really liked computers. So I ended up working with point of sale systems, sort of any IT projects managers around, I guess sort of e-commerce as well with their record store, maintaining day-to-day systems, tyro machines, all sorts of stuff like that. So that really just came sort of out of, wanting a job, wanting to make some money early on, just sort of pick something that I thought was interesting to me. And then sort of moved from there into software sales because I was like, I had a radio show at the time. I was talking a lot and it was like, you can do software things and you can talk. So I actually ended up, a friend of mine worked at Tanda, Elena, who sort of referred me, but told me there was like an event on. It was like a party. It's an event called Beers and Careers, which is an event that we try to keep regularly doing to this day. But it's just sort of a night where anyone can come along and just chat to the team in a really informal environment. So I ended up at that one night, ended up chatting to Phil, who's our now general manager, as well as a bunch of people on the sales team, who are happily now great friends of mine. And yeah, just got talking about, just sort of what I was interested in, software, IT industry. And they're like, have you ever considered working in sales? I was like, not really. Like, I guess, no experience in it. I'd like never considered it. But I guess I was sort of just bored and I was like, like, why not? Like, let's check this out, talk to the team a bit more. Ended up applying a bunch of interviews, started out my first job in sales.
That's awesome. I love these winding paths that we all end up on. It's not like being an accountant where you just like go to university and then like now you're an accountant. It's like everyone has
I always feel like opportunities in anything just appear and you can either take them or not take them, and that's all fine. But yeah, the things just have a way of just appearing and happening, and you can just jump on things like that and it ends up taking you down really interesting paths.
I need to add that to my list of potential targets to hire from radio presenters.
I reckon you can get some bloody good prospectors out of just going to radio stations all the time. Probably a good idea.
Okay, so you're kind of in like an industry that you really loved, like music, and that opportunity sort of came off, and sort of combining IT and all of that. I know when you started at Tanda, you were you're a BDR, or SDR as they may call it in the UK. So you're on the phones, you're doing dials. How was that experience kind of starting there? And I suppose what I want to get to is, how did that experience help you in your role now? Because, you've kind of traveled this path through the sales team into the marketing team, into your growth marketing role now.
Yeah, for sure. I sort of think I started out in sales, and it's really sort of the same way that talking on radio and working with point of sale systems and software in that context, like bringing those two skills together lended really well to software sales. And it's the same way sort of sales fundamentally is communications, and that lends itself really well to marketing because it's all sort of around that concept of framing the value of various things and communicating those to people. And then I guess the thing like growth marketing, like applying that to people's problems all the way across the pipeline and like the customer journey, whether it's, implementation, CS, customer success, and sales. So I think it's just that idea of like, you can really pick up these individual like bits of the puzzle skills in a lot of different roles and industries and just keep sort of combining them, like rolling the ball. It takes you into various different like jobs and industries. And I'm pretty fortunate that it sort of landed me in this growth marketing role I'm in at the moment, because I really enjoy it. And I feel like it's the culmination of all those skills and things I've picked up so far.
Would you recommend that as a path? Like I know that it's not a, let's say not a natural path, but it's not sort of like normal people aren't sort of looking at that kind of role in the sales team to promote up into marketing. But do you think it should be a path? Like, do you think we should be looking at those roles in order to like bring people into the marketing side?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't think of a reason why it wouldn't be a great path that anyone could take, because realistically, like, it's a great introduction to learning a product. It's a great way to interact. You spend all day talking to essentially, future clients, potential clients, prospects. They're your ideal customer profile. Hopefully, if your manager and your RevOps people have set you up with the right leads.
Yeah.
But I think it's really good for just starting out, getting the context of a product, the client base, the problems you solve, the problems they have. And that makes it a really fantastic path jumping from sales to marketing. I think people should probably do it a bit more. I know a lot of my marketing colleagues have never worked in sales, but the ones who have, I think, sort of have a bit of a unique advantage, and maybe even a little bit better at listening to sort of those buying personas and those people they interact with.
Definitely. And the other thing I think that separates a lot of people is just purely the ability to write copy. Like I find that basically, bless them, a lot of people who are like come from a pure, marketing background, it's surprising how many of them actually really struggle to write copy. Whereas, you're doing outbound sales, like you better be able to write a good sales email, or you better be able to write
I'm
some
already
convincing.
smiling because you've somehow gotten onto like my favorite skill within marketing that like everyone needs to know. It's like copywriting.
Yeah.
I think copywriting, I guess sales. I guess we were operating primarily off like sort of the straight line methodology. So we would, every deal is the same. We'd write a script, iterate the script. And I think that, I've actually never thought about prospecting in context to copywriting, but that's probably one of the things that, was my first sort of involvement with copywriting. And I think it's a skill I've been working on really heavily over the last sort of year and a half. And with your earlier question, sort of like the jump from sales to marketing, it was definitely the conduit in between those two was the outbound email cadences was sort of my first brush with like traditional marketing mediums, was getting really into email marketing as part of the sales process. But I think copywriting is just so valuable because like, it's just such a core communication skill. Like it helps you write better emails to your colleagues. It helps you write better sales emails. It helps you write, billboard adverts, web copy, like realistically anything. And I think it probably even helps you with like your speaking and overall, like the way you write and communicate with people. So I think it's just such a valuable, awesome thing to learn.
Absolutely. And I think also, there's something so clarifying about writing. I mean, you sit down and you go to write something and then you realize, oh shit, I actually don't know much about what I'm about to write about. I've had this experience so many times where, come down, let's write some sales copy. And then you think, actually, do I even understand the prospect? Or do I even, am I even able to use their language and understand, what phase they're in the buying cycle? What are their concerns? What would actually resonate with them? I think it's a really awesome exercise to go to because you actually makes you realize how little you know and then how much more you should try and kind of get from them.
And I feel like it's got that unique advantage of you can iterate on things always. Like the first thing you write is always terrible.
Yeah.
Or at least the first thing I always write is
first
terrible.
Three things I write are always terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm lucky. And I think, like when you're talking to people, I guess you can sort of like amend what you've said and re-clarify. But I guess like, yeah, copy just has that really unique advantage of you can really put some practice and time, effort and iteration into it. And I just think that's a great way of just really connecting, like you said, with like the prospects' problems, Because when you start writing, you go like, oh, like maybe I don't understand this. This isn't contextual enough. This isn't really speaking to the things that I want to solve for them. But as you iterate, it gives you, I feel, in the broader sense of what your product or business does, iterating on those messages on a daily basis helps you get really close to those problems and like sort of ingrains them into you much better. Maybe like in comparison to people who just sort of do like a high level, oh, we try and do this, but they might do a set and forget key message that they just reuse all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference between A/B testing some different subject lines and then, but and actually, trying to get better at the craft of writing.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so there's lots of terms out there, and I feel like we should almost retire the term marketing. When you say I work in marketing, it's like, what do you actually do in there? It could be anything from PR to graphic design to more IT sort of based. But I've heard this term sort of associated with you around growth marketing. I mean, what does that sort of mean specifically to you? I mean, I suppose some people would say, oh, all marketing is about growth, but is there something in particular that makes your sort of style different from sort of a more vanilla?
Yeah, I think growth marketing, it's sort of like it's sort of trendy at the moment, but I would like to think that it's probably a trend because more people are taking that style of marketing and communications a bit more seriously. But I think growth marketing makes so much sense to me because it's really just taking those core marketing communication skills and not only using them in your top of funnel, sort of in like your typical demand gen role, but really like taking and applying those across the entire pipeline. So I think like the huge value growth marketers have is actually properly aligning like your product team, your CS team, your implementation teams, and being able to take, those skills around dressing things up, presenting them nicely, communicating, understanding problems, and just giving those outcomes and that expertise to various teams. Because I think traditionally some teams, might lack from a bit of, niceness, dressing things up, like, really putting in extra time to iron out all the extra wrinkles in your pipeline, making sure that that customer journey is really like holistically aligned. It's a consistent experience where, prospects, customers, long-term clients all have like the same really high expectations of you and they consistently, are met. So I think that's like, that'd be my explanation of how growth marketing differs from traditional marketing like demand generation or advertising. I think it's really taking those same skills and applying them all the way down the pipeline. And I think in SaaS, that's really important as well, because obviously recurring revenue, the entire company runs off it. Like preventing churn is equally important as bringing on new clients, because if you're losing them quicker than you're bringing them on, then you're not making money. So I think it's really important to sort of look at that bottom of the pipeline retainment as well.
Oh, absolutely. So you would so in your day to day, you would also help people outside the sales team. So that might be people on the front lines with customers, or even just broadly sort of across the company. So you're sort of like aligning that whole message. And I get and does that also mean that you sort of see the funnel as sort of extending past the sale as well then?
Yeah, absolutely.
And messaging should keep going past it.
I hope it's like a bucket. It doesn't keep going. It just stops at the bottom and everyone stays there as a customer forever. Infinite lifetime value.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. I just think it's like the flywheel model, right? It's like goes around in circles. When you delight people, it helps your top of pipeline and your lead acquisition because your brand awareness is fantastic. And there's just so many reasons why you should be engaging your existing customers and clients from a marketing sense. There's just so many outcomes you can achieve. I think a good example of that is we've been running the equivalent of our sales and marketing webinars for our clients. So we were using them for acquisition. We'd be doing, our best to produce really valuable content around relevant topics. But realistically, the content is still equally valuable for someone, whether or not they're a customer of ours. They're still doing the same role. They're still the same people. There's no reason why we can't create the exact same sorts of marketing content, to make our clients just as happy as prospects. And I think it's really, it's not too much extra effort to just take the same principles and keep applying them further on.
Absolutely. And I always sort of thought that, like I'm really a big my big interest is in a lot of sort of like content and kind of like reusability of content. Like say you sit down and you make some graphics, or you do a webinar series on something. I think sort of like the best position you can get to is where you're able to, sort of reuse that in a sales. It's able to put it into a sales interaction, maybe through a PDF that you send to someone, or some sort of like resource pack. Marketing, as some sort of gated content, but also giving it to your existing customers. It sounds like it's kind of, as long as it's kind of reusable and it's got value in it, then you can sort of pitch it out to a lot of different audiences.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like if you're really putting in time to do the proper research, that content is going to be, valuable for everyone. It shouldn't just be, oh, like this might make people sign up for a newsletter. If you're really putting in the effort to do truly valuable contextual, like problem solving, so outcomes with your marketing, then it's just so applicable to everyone.
Can I ask you, so you mentioned, you mentioned, the infinite lifetime value of customers and some of the benefit around that. Do you consider sort of referrals and things in there as well? Like, is there anything that because like I suppose that's like the big thing. You got happy customers, right? And they should be referring people. I see lots of businesses that have, referrals tend to be one of the sort of first things that happen in kind of their own way. Obviously very hard to scale those, but do you have any sort of gems or thoughts on, I guess, promoting referrals? Because it can be a difficult thing. It doesn't work kind of in every setting.
Yeah, referrals are always, I've always found them very tricky to attribute, because obviously they come through organic mediums, or it might be a marketing converted lead through an email, but the person realistically clicked it because they've been referred by someone. And I think part of my role is working really closely with our partnerships team in generating referrals, not only from software partners, industry partners, implementation partners, and things like that. And I think referral is just so powerful, because there's nothing, it's like in-person social proof, essentially. Like, it's really someone who is prepared to, put their name against, say, hey, like these guys are really good. Their software is fantastic. Like, they've done great stuff for me. That's so much better than any case study you could ever write. Or, you could claim that you did X, Y, Z for a client, but having someone actually like go to bat for you is really awesome. That's even something we'd like to do better. I think we're sort of in our infancy in partnerships, just in getting customer referrals.
Mm-hmm.
We've never really done the typical, we've never heavily incentivized it, no monetary sort of compensation, and we've never approached people intentionally to ask for a referral. But we've seen them sort of organically happen as a result of us engaging clients more closely. So I'd say an improvement for us would be, maybe we go and strategize and look at how we can more effectively leverage referrals in a personal sense rather than just through partners. Because I think you're right. It's really, really great stuff.
Attribution is so difficult with that. And it's also like, referrals can happen and help you in so many ways. Like, a referral can be telling someone, to buy it, or it can even just be like vouching for you in the sales process, or, down to, they see their logos, or they see sort of like industries kind of on the website as sort of social proof. So I think all of that's valuable. Is that one of the challenges you think that you're sort of facing? I'm really interested in kind of like, marketing for B2B SaaS, versus kind of other industries and other mediums. I mean, what do you see as kind of like your core challenges, like the headwinds to kind of you doing your job sort of day to day?
Yeah, I think us has been, the biggest challenge for us has been specific to the direction we want to take the company. And that's really changing our ideal customer profile to a larger company. So as our software's scaled, as we've built out more advanced features and better infrastructure, we've gone, oh, look, we can probably move up market. We can handle these big customers. Our team's experienced. We can implement them with ease. Our support team can handle any requests from larger customers. It's probably time to do it. And sort of with referrals as well, we've started closing larger and larger deals. When you can show that you're doing it, other people take notice. And so it's led to this natural upmarket progression for us. But that's obviously been the biggest challenge as well, because you find that as you get into the enterprise space and the upper mid-market spaces, there's more stakeholders to convince, there's more people to engage, there's more opinions. The stakes are a lot higher in terms of the cost of them implementing, the cost of them buying. And so I think, I guess, going to that really heavily account-based strategy where you're sort of marketing and pitching to multiple decision makers at the same time has been the biggest challenge and like the biggest learning experience recently. But it's something I'm really excited for, because I think that's for us the best path to long-term growth. But it's definitely, like a really big challenge.
Mm, absolutely. And that changes everything. I was talking to a client yesterday that sort of, they had a few different segments that they could potentially target. And those segments had different sized clients and with different requirements in it. And one thing that was like pretty obvious is, if you build a company around SME, or you build a company around enterprise, or certain set points in the middle, that's going to change like everything else downstream. Like your customer success team needs to look different. The size of your implementation team might be bigger or smaller. You might need sort of more developers kind of on a kind of supporting or implementing customers rather than sort of just building pure product. It completely changes. So I imagine that also changes, or at least puts some demands on the business to kind of adapt as well, with the customer size coming up.
Yeah, exactly. We were just running in two teams. So we had like the SME side of Tanda and we had the enterprise team. And we're very much, based on the staff count of the business, it was cut straight down the middle. You're either dealing with enterprise or dealing with SME, but we're sort of starting to see that, the SME team are getting more proficient at closing big deals. But the enterprise team have the devs to support sort of custom integrations, like solutions architects and scoping the implementation in that regard. And then they also have sort of the more proficient implementation team for those really complex legislative requirements that we're dealing with. So it's sort of like trying to find that transition of where there's like now there's more and more overlap between the two teams than ever. And yeah, as you said, like when you pick your market, you sort of have to structure your business around it. So we're sort of seeing a little bit of an internal restructure and sharing of resources between the two teams.
Mm. You brought up ABM, so account-based marketing, before.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I'm seeing with lots of people I'm working with, like, particularly as they sort of get further and further into that, is, account-based marketing, it actually becomes like a really big, like data-heavy process. Because, say if you've got, before you'd have a business with a single decision maker, you basically say, leads are accounts, and you can pretty much, target them in that way. Once you're basically saying, okay, you have multiple, contacts at these accounts and we have to measure engagement, it becomes very data heavy, and you need to make sure you have good data integrity and all the rest of it. How have you guys kind of approached that kind of data problem? Do you see it as a data research problem, or is it more just around selecting the right accounts, or where have you sort of found the challenges in ABM being?
The biggest challenge is making the damn salespeople put in the correct data when they're manually putting in things afterwards. They're the worst. No, they're actually pretty good now. But I think we were really fortunate. We have like some great people in RevOps and in marketing who are all just very passionate about marketing automation and data. And sort of like the thing a lot of us were looking at was like, we need really clean, structured lead lists. We go and do lead gen. We're not putting it in the CRM until we're happy with it. It's got to be clean data. It's got to be accurate. Because when you want to do a lot of like personalization, customization, like buying personas and context driven sort of marketing stuff, you really need to have those people sorted into the correct segments. Otherwise, everything just falls apart. So I think like the biggest challenge was finding the data to begin with. So is it really costly with manual lead gen? Or there's some really great emerging technology and existing technology. You got like the Zoom infos and sort of databases like that. But a lot of the time, those can be really unreliable, especially in the Australian market, and especially in the like SME. So if we're targeting like an SME hospitality, the data in most mainstream places is really unreliable. So it's sort of a challenge of bringing together all these different methods of getting data, getting lead gen, combining them into what we think is the perfect lead with everything you need to contact someone.
Yeah.
And then making sure those really stand before we get them into the CRM.
Mm. Yeah, it's so tricky. I mean, yeah, because I also think that you need to have it's sort of almost like a programming thing. Like you almost need to have like the data object and the data model kind of there in your mind. Like the example of that is like if things are being driven off events, um, you don't want to necessarily represent that as a field because you can have multiple of these events and you have to sort of report across them. So anyway, that's just a little nerdy point. I think I spend a lot of time thinking about that sort of stuff. So I'm always interested to hear how other people are kind of approaching it. Um, I was actually kind of interested maybe on that point. You know, a lot of people I think that I've been speaking to, they're kind of in this point of flux where they're saying, well, they're thinking about, where do I put my resources? Do I hire more salespeople? Do I sort of beef out my marketing function? Is there like a point in a company's sort of life cycle, or is there anything that you can kind of tell when you need to get, someone in growth marketing, when you need to basically have someone that can kind of sit across, all the customer
Yeah,
interactions?
it's a really informal way, but the proxy gauge we sort of used for a little bit was like, how busy are our salespeople? Like, are they consistently doing like back-to-back demos? So I guess like the demand generation side of things for marketing, like the primary objective is how many sales qualified leads are we delivering per week, per month, per quarter? And it's, we have a pretty lean marketing team in Australia and internationally, but I think it's just because those teams are pretty efficient in delivering work and opportunities to salespeople.
Mm.
So it's about a ratio of like one marketer to 5 salespeople. And I think if you were to look at when you need a growth market, it's like how much it's like pulling levers, to pull more levers. Top funnel, do you need to improve your close rates in the middle? Are there tons of leads coming in with a bad close rate, or are there just no leads coming in at all? So I think it's just really contextual to the, I guess, sort of velocity in your pipeline, where things are dropping off and where those problems are happening. And that'll really come down to like which role you want to hire.
That's such a good way to look at it. So you sort of look at the pipeline and say, okay, where are the, where's the bottleneck? Are we not getting enough leads in the front of it? Are we not closing enough of them? Are they not moving through fast enough? Or is there sort of something happening on the back end, or the churn side? So you would sort of suggest look at the pipeline, look at where those are, and then kind of solve back from that.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a limited budget and you had to put it absolutely like in the right spot, maybe it's not even in sales and marketing. Maybe you need to be investing more heavily in support. Maybe churn's the big issue with having sustainable revenue that sticks around.
Mm.
Yeah, I think it's for us, I know like the next opportunity we'll be looking to explore is probably beefing up our outbound sales team, which was historically really strong, but then we've sort of promoted and upskilled those people within the company. And now we, just need to replace them and fulfill that gap. So sometimes, marketing is operating as efficiently, and then you just need like more outbound direct salespeople, out there on the front lines, more prospectors.
Yeah, can I ask you a really? I kind of have this sort of pet frustration with the way that some companies set up expectations around the sales team. But I know over here, in the UK and also in America as well, there's kind of the way that a lot of SaaS companies structure it is you've kind of got BDRs, SDRs, they're running outreach campaigns, cold calling, all those things, and they're booking in demos for an AE account executive. And there's kind of always this implicit thing for the BDRs, you do this, basically stick out this for long enough, 12 months, 18 months maybe, and you might get a promotion to AE. So we sort of tell them, you're kind of a lesser role, but eventually you'll get the skills to be an AE. But my sort of opinion of it is they're completely different skill sets. I mean, if someone who can like come in and have cold conversations with people is just worth their weight in gold. And then we regularly promote those people into other areas where they're still adding value, and they might even be adding more value. But I just don't like this sort of implicit thing that like, you know, SDRs are somehow less than AEs. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that because you've worked in it. You know, are we losing that talent, or is it easy enough to just bring fresh blood in, teach them, and we don't lose any efficiency at all?
Yeah, it's a really tricky one. I forget where I read it, but there was someone who was sort of a VP of sales managing a really big SDR BDR team, and they were really firm on like their belief that it would take 9 months for an SDR or a BDR to probably be sort of working and operating at their full potential and capacity, sort of coming into the role. You know, it would really take them 9 months to be really proficient with the product, know the client, know the customer base, things like that. And so I think, you know, if you are offering, you know, sort of the role with the, you know, implied promotion after 12 months, maybe you're only getting 3 months of their best work. And I think maybe if we, I guess, gave those roles a bit more sort of like dignity, and we're like, yeah, this is like a really meaningful role, because it is like they bring in revenue. It's absolutely a skill. I know we have developers at Tanda who looked at the prospectors and went, how are those guys like on the phones all day, like so cheerful and positive, like just churning deals, solving problems, you know, doing a fantastic job. Like, oh, I can't do that. That's like, so the external observer thinks it's really valuable, and it's bringing in revenue, which is, you know, tangibly valuable. I just think we should maybe focus more like as an industry on retaining people in those roles past that 12-month period, maybe making it like a proper sort of path that people stick out for multiple years and become, you know, real masters at. I think that could be really valuable as like an overall shift. And I think it's sort of getting there a little bit. I've been seeing a little bit more mentions of like the term SDR, I feel, has grown in popularity a lot over the last 12 months. And it seems like SDRs are getting a little bit more like credit and praise, at least from what I've seen on LinkedIn in those circles, which I think is really good.
I just wonder if you stuck it, like, you know, it would take a real particular type of person, but if you stuck at that for, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I mean, like, what does peak SDR look like? Like, what is
Have we even witnessed it yet?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
We've seen 10 demos a day, but could we be seeing 20?
Yeah, exactly. I could just imagining almost like you know, a keyboard with hotkeys and just like they just optimized everything.
Yeah. They've got like an Ableton launch pad with like pre-recorded voice snippets and things.
Yeah,
I reckon you get so insanely proficient at solving problems and selling software. It would be mind-boggling. I'd love to see it. It'd be just such an amazing thing to witness.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, mate, you've been so generous with your time. I think one of the last things I wanted to ask you, which I like to ask, is just sort of around, you know, do you have any sort of contrarian thoughts on marketing? So, you know, you can take this question two ways. Is there a piece of advice or sort of a sort of industry knowledge that's just accepted by everyone that you just think is rubbish, or, you know, or is there something that you're doing that like no one else is doing, and they should really be paying attention to it? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think it's like tremendously contrarian at all, but at least an opinion that a lot of people who aren't in marketing or sales have. That's like the role's about like tricking or baiting people into doing something, like forcing them down the funnel by dressing things up or embellishing, taking creative liberty with things. And I think some of that goes on, and it's sort of like the bad stuff gets all like the visibility, but the good stuff sort of goes unnoticed. And I think for the most part, everyone that I get to interact with in industry is just trying to do their absolute best work, provide the maximum value for all kinds of different people. And I think that's like a really great way to approach business in general, is just, you know, doing things selflessly, putting content out there, you know, trying to help people run their business. You know, in something like a pandemic, like I know our founders built like a reopen tool to help businesses reopen over COVID. And that was just something like, it didn't make us any money. It wasn't about looking good or cramming people down the pipeline. Like, I think a lot of marketing is just providing value because people like creating value. They like creating those outcomes and opportunities for people. And I think that's how more people should probably view the industry.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I put up a thing on LinkedIn the other day saying, all sales teams, we're always saying, we use a modern sales approach. We're not used car salesmen, anymore. And I was sort of wondering, like, are used car salesmen still selling like that? Are we just slating used car salesmen and they've completely changed? Someone commented on that and said, no, I used to be a used car salesman and we definitely did these like standover tactics. So, maybe that's still a reasonable thing. But yeah, I do agree. I think, even just people's opinions of salespeople, like, people almost feel like, one, you have to be this really fast talker. You have to know, you have to be able to sort of, almost like a stand-up comedian, be able to say everything in the right moment. Have like a, just persona for days. And there's sort of something untoward about it. Like, yeah, we're
Yeah,
sort of
like you
tricking
have to
people.
be, you're an expert professional liar.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, like the best salespeople I know are like the opposite of that. They're just like completely transparent and truthful. And like that's the thing that really pays off in a lot of deals is, not working against the prospect, but working with them. And it's like, yeah, they shouldn't be viewed that way.
No.
And there's like working with our US team, it's really funny because they hire for salespeople. And over there, sales is a huge thing in the US. Like they love it. And salespeople are just sort of seen as like your everyday, like, I was going to say true blue, but that's Aussie. I don't know, like American dream, sort of aspirational, like it's not capitalist in a negative way, but it's just like what people do over there. Like it's a very legitimate profession. But then you look in Australia and they're like a little bit more vilified, at least in my experience. But I just think the contrast in culture between that is really interesting. And maybe that culture will shift more towards like how the Americans view salespeople as like, oh, it's just like a normal job.
Oh, I mean, if you could have a sales team of people who are, maybe slightly less charismatic, but as to your point before, actually put data in the CRM, I think we'd all and followed the process. I think we'd all be a lot better off. So yeah, that's definitely right. Mate, I want to give just people watching this opportunity if they want to, connect with you or they want to find more about Tanda. I mean, is there any way that you can sort of point them, or is there any sort of resources that you think is helpful
Yeah.
for other people in sales and marketing?
Tanda.co, hit us up. New website. Give me some feedback on it. Do you like the new graphics? Do you like the new copy? That'd be great. You can find me. I'm just Bryn Tardent-Powell on LinkedIn. I'm sure I'll be linked and mentioned on the Seed Lever socials. My name's a bit hard to spell, but I can be located. And yeah, hit up our sister companies in the US and UK, workforce.com. They do some really awesome work as well with rostering, time and attendance. A little lighter on the award compliance and industrial relations stuff, but they still put in some awesome work.